experience and intelligence. We welcome you here, sir.
We'll try and briefly give you inputs on different topics. We'll start with market research. So let's make it interactive, otherwise we're going to have a lot of people falling down. No seat belts here. Okay. So what do you understand by market research? What is your understanding of market research? Let's have more in, let's say, answers from the MBA guys. Okay, understand market. What else? Analyzing the market. So why is it required? Why is it required?
To know the behavior of the consumers and exactly know what is the market.
Okay, what else? Okay, improve the qualities, etc. See, simple logic is, before I invest a lot of money into doing something, I would rather spend a small amount in trying to understand, so that the chances of making mistakes go down. Right? It's as simple as that. So these are some of the reasons which market research is done for. So obviously major part would be to understand the customers and their buying patterns. So biggest amount of market research happens there. And obviously as markets keep on changing, competition, etc., you have to understand competition, what would make people buy, where do they buy, etc. All is also done through market research. So you can position your product properly, you can distribute properly, you can have the right logistics, etc. Okay. So broadly, if you look at market research, these are going to be the steps that are there. So obviously at the base you have problem definition, right? So what is this problem definition? Is trying to understand why the hell are we doing this. And quite honestly, this is a very important step, because if we go wrong here itself, the entire process of market research is going to go wrong. Once you've defined the problem, understood what you would like to do the research for, the next would be to get into research design, the structure of what you're going to do, right? And then you're going to collect data, and we're going to look at that there is two types of data: primary, secondary. And there's something called as sampling, which will also get into some details, because you can't contact the entire market. You have to contact a sample, a representative. You'll actually get into data collection, again, which there are various ways and methods to collect data. Once you collect data, then the statisticians take over. Normally a market researcher would not get into data analysis. It would be handed over to an expert called a statistical expert, who in turn would use various softwares. Some of the softwares that are very popular are Statistica or SPSS, etc. And they'll try to make sense of the data. Okay. The statistician is normally going to give you some inputs, but what to make of the input is again going to be the market researcher's job. Okay. And finally, you're going to get into some answer, application. So these are broad steps in the market research process. Right? Now honestly, when you look at this process, is this used only by companies? Yes or no? No, even you would use it. Right? When you are trying to do something new, even you would do this, right? How many of you got work experience before? One? Anybody else? So if searching for a new job, you'll do this only. Right? Would you apply to all the 5 lakh companies in India? So what do you do? Right, you will first filter data by using primary as well as secondary data. And from the 30, 40 odd you feel, you will again select a sample which you feel you will fit in, right? So market research is the process, or the steps are going to be same everywhere. Clear? Now, typically when you look at research design, there are going to be 3 types of researches. One, you have got something called as the exploratory research. The second is descriptive research, and third is a causal research. Please remember, it is not casual, it's causal. So the spelling is wrong here. Okay, it's deliberate. So when you do not know anything about a problem, you would get into exploratory research, right? I mean, what do customers buy? I'm not aware. So I got into a exploratory research. Second, why do they buy? Descriptive research. If I do X, Y, Z, will they buy? Causal research, right? And normally, very few researchers would be of exploratory manner. You can't afford it. It will largely be descriptive and causal. Yeah? So obviously applications are in strategic applications, demand forecasting, segmentation studies, trying to identify our target markets, positioning, etc., etc. Right from, let's say, product research, pricing research. What price point would people buy, right? Today in most of the competitive markets, a very quick research is done to find out what would customers be willing to pay, and then you work backwards to try and make the product in that range. So normally companies take a price target based on some research in the market and then try to work backwards to make a product in that price. Obviously segmentation becomes very critical, and today what is the most important thing in segmentation? Pardon? What is the most important problem in segmentation? लफड़ा क्या होता है? Segments change very fast today. I mean, unlike in the past where segments used to last a substantial amount of time, the segmentation parameters as well as segments itself change very fast, right? So it's very difficult to identify a segment which is going to last you for a long time. Okay. Then obviously you have distribution research. What would be the most optimum way, where to distribute, how to distribute, right? Because today internet is creating a disrupting force. And finally, one very popular research that happens is advertising. What is the impact of advertising? Do people appreciate it? Do people remember it? What is the recall rate, etc., etc. Even which channels, which media to advertise is a very big area of market research, right? Then sales promotion. Second largest would be obviously consumer behavior research apart from distribution. Then there are governments who also do a lot of social research. Okay. Social research is not normally done by organizations. It is done by a lot of NGOs as well as government, right? And then there is a limited but increasing area of market research which is into financial research. Savings habits, investments habits, etc., etc. Okay. So what are the limitations before we go to details of some of the topics? First of all, though it's a science, it's not an accurate science. Okay. There are too many variables that come into play when you do research. And the interplay of variables could be so dynamic, you really can't sometimes decide what exactly is leading to what. Okay. And obviously since there are going to be some vague areas, the human interface and tendencies do affect the results. Since all of you are doing, I believe all the MBA people in the second year. How many of you got involved in sample surveys? How many of you got involved? Did any company approach you? Chalo, दिन का 100 रुपए मिलेगा इतना. Question is भर के लाओ. Anybody has done this work? No, but have you done it for a company? Okay. So what is the biggest problem here if you look at the last one, limitations? सही बोलो ना, घर पे बैठ के भरते हो, फेक भरते हो ना. 50% are fake reality. So that's why when we look at market research, sometimes the research gets diverted or misguided just to prove a particular result, right? So a lot of problems do occur in the way it is conducted, and that's why errors do occur. That's one of the biggest limitations. So it's also from the customer side, or the consumer side. He also gives false information because he's scared whether this information will be used, misused, whatever. Sometimes he wants to prove, make itna great and gives all wrong answers. He has a two-wheeler, but he'll say I have a two-wheeler, a four-wheeler. Okay, so human tendencies also affect the market research. Okay. Now, typically in market research, this cycle keeps on happening. Okay, you have a vague problem, you get into exploratory research, you develop some hypothesis, which will lead you to a causal research, which again leads to new ideas, again get into exploratory research. Okay, so this cycle is going to keep on re-happening every time. Clear? Okay. What do you understand by research design? It's a broad framework or a blueprint. Suppose if you are going to plan to build a building, so what do you understand by a blueprint? It's a rough sketch of what the building will look like. Clear? Now, one of the most important things of market research is the cost. And where does the maximum amount of cost happen? In data collection. And that becomes one of the, again, a very big limitation of market research. The biggest cost is always in data collection. And in that, again, when we go a few steps further, we'll realize the costliest is survey. The costliest is a survey. And that's the reason many companies can't afford it. So they get into other methods, right? Now, typically, if you look at the research design, there are two broad areas. I said exploratory, and second is to try and to get into conclusive research. Conclusive means you can draw some conclusion out of it. In conclusive, I said there are two, descriptive and there is a causal. Now, in descriptive again, there is something called as longitudinal studies. Any idea what it means? It means targeting the same customer multiple times over a period of time. Okay. Any idea where it is done? Is it being done in Pune, in India? Any idea? Heard of a company called AC Nielsen? No. They are one of the world's largest market research companies, right? In Pune at least, they have a longitudinal study going on for some 12 or 13 products. One of them is, let's say, hair oil. Okay. So what do you do that in a longitudinal study? They've got about, let's say, 2,000 families in Pune whom they would ask every 6 months. And the target is about 7 years, that so they'll be contacting this 2,000 families 14 times in 7 years. What do they ask? Let's suppose the study is about hair oil. Every 6 months, that's twice a year, they will go to the same family, ask them what is the consumption of hair oil, which hair oil has been used, has there been any change in the brand, etc. Who else is added to the consumption, who has dropped out, etc., etc., and the reasons behind. So over a period of 7 years, they might be able to come to some, let's say, direction. What is the trend in hair oil use, let's say, in Pune? Now, how do I know this? Because luckily, unluckily, whatever, my wife was one of those who was targeted. So And of course, every time they come to us, they would give some small gift, otherwise there's no incentive to answer, But longitudinal studies do happen where it is fairly new in India, but it has started, where they're trying to look at the pattern of consumption of particular products over a very long period of time. Is it changing? Is it changing suddenly? Is it a slow change? If the change is happening, why is it happening? Right? So that they can give a report or generate some hypothesis where they can advise their clients. So it's happening also for toothpaste, it's happening for some of liquor drinks, Okay. So the trends have changed in practically every of the 12 products being studied in Pune. Okay. I'm surprised you don't know AC Nielsen. It's one of the world's largest market research companies. Right? The same can also be done through a cross-sectional design, where instead of the same, let's say families, they would have similar families across sections, and then they would again get into a longer period of time. Right? Either you can have a single product or a multiple, same family, multiple products. Clear? Something like this does happen abroad. It is slowly again started in India in few cities, where they're asking consumers to keep diaries, and they're paying them, of consumption. And these diaries are accessed by the market research, so they come to know what is typically consumed by a family. Every 3 months they'll collect diaries, photocopy it, give it back. Okay? And where have they bought? So they get a lot of ideas. Okay, we've looked at exploratory research. Now, what is descriptive research? Is basically to find out characteristics of a particular consumer or whatever in terms of description. For example, if I say, who buys a mid-size hatchback costing between 5 to 7 lakhs? Now, if I do a market research and find out data, I might end up with a description that the typical family of size 5 earning between 10 to 12 lakhs a year in one of these jobs or professions and in these locations tend to buy a hatchback. So what I have done, I have been able to describe the consumer of a hatchback. So how would I have done it? Because I have done a research, collected data from various things, and then I able to. Many times companies need an answer. Who is our customer? Can I identify or describe my typical customer? So a descriptive research would help them identify who's my typical customer. For example, for DPU, MBA, what would be a descriptive question for a research for this? What would be a research looking for? Who does a MBA and why? Clear? Then obviously you'll come to know people from so and so background, so and so educational backgrounds, financial backgrounds, so and so cities, etc. would do it. And believe me, you'll be surprised that across all institutes in the country, even students tend to come from selective locations because there's a word of mouth. Okay. So if you see even DPU, last 5 years you'll see majority 80% coming from certain locations. Oh, mera senior udhar gaya hai, even I have to go there, sort of. So you can actually see that there is a pattern that emerges in 80%, right? Now obviously, as I said, the most critical aspect in market research is data collection. It's also the costliest and the most complicated. Any idea what it would cost for a 5,000 sample in Pune, a questionnaire filled up? It costs about 5 lakhs. It's not easy, and when we come to sampling, if it's a FMCG product which is consumed by the masses, would a 5,000 sample be enough? The answer is obviously no. you need a much larger sample size, right? So in data, obviously you'll have two types of data. First is secondary data and primary data, right? Now, when you collect data, typically you would get into errors also, right? So what are the typical errors you'll have? One is a random sampling error and a second is a non-sampling error. What is non-sampling? It doesn't depend on the sample. It's purely the response error, right? When you say non-response, means that person has not responded. Okay, in response, obviously there could be a researcher error in the data collection. Most important is what? Surrogate information. What do you understand by surrogate information? Huh? You are giving information on somebody else's behalf, right? I am supposed to contact a student. X number, I have identified a name, but his friend answers. That's a surrogate information. Now, obviously, there could be a difference in what this person could have answered versus you would have answered, right? There could be a measurement error. Means what? You have certain scales which will come to when the measurement is in, let's say, very good to very bad. So, उसमें अगर marking का गलती हो गया या understanding में गलती हो गया, you have a measurement error. There could be a population definition error, right? I might have a age group 18 to 22, as my target population. But very difficult to find out who's 18 and who's 22, and even a 30 years guy might look 18. So there's a definition error in terms of the population. There could be a sampling frame error. I am supposed to interview MBA students, and somebody comes to this campus, ends up interviewing many other people who are not MBAs also, maybe dental students, etc., etc. And finally, there could be error in the data analysis. Interviewer is the respondent is not selected properly. Questioning, the way you question also can lead to error. Recording, while ticking off or by writing the answers, you have gone wrong, and something which some of you would have done in the survey is the cheating error. 4 लोगों को मिले लेकिन 10 फॉर्म भर के दिया है. Okay. And finally, the respondent could also make error where he is unable to answer questions or he is unwilling to give some answers. Okay. Typically, a market research proposal would have these fields, Okay. Okay. Let's look at the most important is secondary data. Why is secondary data important? Because it costs very, very less, right? So obviously, first choice would be to collect secondary data, right? Once you've exhausted secondary data, then you might go to try and collect primary data. I'm again repeating, primary data is very, very costly, right? So secondary data is data which is already collected, available in some form or the other. It may be free or may be chargeable. It may be free or may be chargeable, right? It could be government data, it could be non-government data, right? Now in India there is one government data which is used by practically all the companies. Which is that? Practically all the companies would use it. So which data would be that? So उसको क्या बोलते हो? Census data. Though it is done every 10 years, the degree of accuracy is fairly high. And over the years, the census has started collecting more and more information like educational background, numbers in family, incomes, basic assets like car, वगैरह. So it's of immense use. In turn, there are many agencies that would use them to classify that data into what is called as SEC data. What is SEC? Socio-economic class. Okay. So there are many expert agencies that would convert that data into SEC data, socio-economic class data. And then you start getting, I mean, believe me, the data of the census is so good that, for example, if you just want, let's say, in Ahmednagar district, you can get many data, like how many people own land, what is the average land holding of farmers, how many of them have two-wheelers, etc. How many days they are occupied in a year, etc. Becomes very, very useful for a market researcher and marketing companies, right? So what are the advantages of second data? First of all, it is cheap and easily accessible, also collected very fast. So the time required to collect data is maybe 10, 15, max a month. What could be a disadvantage? What could be a disadvantage of second data? The first is what? You could have a doubt on its authenticity. And if you look at today, most MBA students use Google to find out data, right? Do you know whether it's authentic or you simply download it? Do you know whether it's authentic or you simply download and use it? I know. Huh? Yeah, again, but then you might use it as a reference, but is it authentic, genuine or not? I don't know. Right? Generally, government publish second data is believed to be authentic. Okay, various ministries, various industries publish their own data. Okay. So first is it authentic? Second is it really the latest? Because many times there's a huge time lag by the time you get the data. For example, census is 10 years. Census happens once in 10 years. Or let's say most ministries publish data after every year. In between, there could have been a lot of changes in the industry. Third disadvantage, it may not be in the format that I want it. Let me give you a simple example. When I was working in Thermax and we were involved in a lot of data analysis, we needed, let's say, information on pumps exported from India. Data was available on the government website. But then we wanted data of 5 to 10 HP. While the data was 0 to 25, 25 to 50. So what we wanted was very difficult to get or practically impossible because the data collected there was 0 to 25 HP. Then 25 to 50. We wanted specifically 5 to 50 HP. And that we could not derive. I mean, it's very, very vague to find out if that is, let's say, 10,000 numbers, 5,000 numbers will be this data. So it will not be in the format that we want. Right? Now, that is why second data becomes a problem. But which is one of the most important second data that companies can use today? Which is one of the most important second data, which companies have started realizing over the last 8-10 years, and it has made a significant difference in the way market research is done. So which is one of the most important second data that companies were ignoring in the past, but they have now used it very well. Their own internal data. Because if you really get into internal data, which today is now being used as CRM, right from the first interaction of a customer till now, what's been the history, is being captured by internal data. And it is making a huge difference. It's making a huge difference. Right? Let's say even MBA colleges, are they also using internal secondary data? Yes, no. How? What else? Okay, from which area? What else? The most important is for placement. हमारे पुराने बंदे किधर है उनको पकड़ो ना पहले. Most colleges are doing it, including IIMs. Every year they are updating data, collecting where their ex-students are, contacting them so that placement becomes better, which was not being tapped very actively till about 5-6 years back. But with ERPs, online systems, CRMs, etc., this data is becoming more and more useful, right? Then obviously second data is primary data, right? Now, primary data, okay, let's look at some of the published second data. There's a general business data and other sources. In government sources, you have guides, directories, indexes, and statistical data. And then you've got general business. Now, this again is also a huge business called as syndicated services. What are syndicated services? A lot of agencies like CRISIL, ICRA, AC Nielsen, JD Power, which collect data on their own on various parameters and actually submit it to, sell it to whoever is interested. And these are very authentic, very well researched reports, and they are costly, but they are worth it. So these are nothing but syndicate, which is an emerging field in India. It's always been there across the world. But today a lot of companies are willing to pay for syndicated services, right? Now today there is a new application for this, What is that? IoT. Today data is being collected on how customers are using products, right? Today you can actually find out how much is a car user running every day, what is his average speed, how many passengers are there in the car. By simple probes and IoT, companies are collecting a lot of data. Even in, let's say, shopping malls, IoT is monitoring footfalls, it's monitoring which products are being seen, etc., etc., right? Which is nothing but wholesale and retail audits through data collection, right? Okay, let's slightly do a small variation. I just want to take you back to the flow of market research. Okay, now let's look at this flow. There is one area where all of you would have seen this happening even in your family. So any idea where this entire process is used? That's why one of the best examples for understanding market research is arranged marriage. An arranged marriage. So let's look at the steps of arranged marriage and correlate it to market research. So what is the first step in arranged marriage? Let's assume it's a girl side looking for a boy. तो पहले क्या होता है? हाँ? प्रॉब्लम है शादी करने की नहीं ना सब पहले. बराबर है? If the answer is yes, then you get into specifications कि किस टाइप का लड़का चाहिए. So obviously there will be some broad criteria. Today plus minus, earlier only plus था, plus minus 2-3 years of your age, right? Height again plus minus चलते हैं आजकल है ना, so plus minus 2-3 inches of your height. Education qualification, etc. You specify कि this is what you would like to let's say, have as a prospective broom. So you get into specifications, which is nothing but your problem definition, right? Then next step क्या होता है? हाँ? Pardon? उसके पहले क्या होता है? You decide where to look, ना, which is your research design, right? Matrimonial sites है, again syndicated services है. In all societies, all castes, all communities have their syndicated services. There are some people who only do it as a hobby or as a profession. In many of them, it's only a hobby, you know, and they do nothing else, you know. And they do it very honestly, let's face it also. They also do it very honestly. Plus, you also would have your own database, right? So, you'll use both primary as well as secondary data. Then suppose some 50, 60 are shortlisted. Would you go and see all of them, or would you see a sample? Sample. So, you have to again decide from that which looks a good sample size. And you actually go and meet and collect data. You would analyze it, interpret it, and then finally decide yes or no. So, if you look at a arranged marriage, it is nothing but a market research process, which has been done for centuries. It's been done for centuries. It's only now you have better ways of data collection. So you've got matrimonial sites, and you've got internet, you've got Skype, etc. No? Earlier, the network in the society and caste really mattered. So their databases was really what helped. And they used to have authentic data. How is a mystery, but then they used to keep updated, right? So, arranged marriage is a classic example of a market research. So, if you understand arranged marriage, you understand market research, right? Honestly, you know, arranged marriage, I mean, you're going to have a section on project management later on, you know. It's also a project. It's also a project. So, whatever steps are used in project management are also used in arranged marriage. Classic example. So, if you look around us, you can see a lot of these applications. You can actually look around and get these applications. Even when you want to find a house, you are actually using the same process. So, why I am trying to highlight this is, sometimes a lot of us feel confused or find subjects boring or vague or complicated, you know. If you can quickly get into it, can I use it for this, you know, and then you start applying, it works, and it helps you to remember the concepts better. Because when I should teach strategic management, I should also be a visiting faculty. We should use a marriage also for strategic management. You know. Is it a hostile takeover? Is it a friendly takeover? Is it a merger? Is it an acquisition? Was the due diligence done? So all these are part of strategic management, no? In a takeover case. So keep on quickly trying to see where you can apply it, and you'll understand the concepts better, right? Okay, this is let's come to the actual methods of data collection, which is primary data. Now, in primary data, again, you will have two types of data you can collect. One is qualitative, and second is observational, right? Now, qualitative data basically describe. Quantitative will give you numbers, right? So when you look at qualitative data methods also, they tend to be open-ended and have less structures. They will rely more on interactive methods and iterative methods. What is iterative? Repeated. Okay. That's why they also take time, right? Now, what are the typical ways of collecting qualitative research? One is focus groups. Second is in-depth, and third is projective techniques, right? So what do you understand by focus groups? Hmm. Hmm. Okay, any other viewpoint?
A target market where they are focusing,
Hmm.
they are asked the questions about what is the problem.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, basically a focus group is normally used for exploratory and descriptive, not for causal, right? You're right, you would have a small group between 12 to 20 people, not more than that. What is important in a focus group is to always have a good moderator. Why? For two reasons: to ensure that the topic doesn't go haywire, and second is people don't get into unnecessary debate and possibly fights, right? So moderator ensures that the topic is maintained and people don't get into arguments or fights or whatever. So the skill of the moderator is very crucial in a focus group, right? Normally a focus group would not last more than 45 minutes to an hour, because nobody can give you more than that. Yes, normally you'll have to give them some incentive to come and discuss. A focus group could be a common set of people having same characteristics, or could be some target description, right? Let me give you a classic example of a focus group which I was involved in way back in 90s. In those days, Titan had just emerged in the Indian scenario. Until that time, the dominant company in watch market was which? HMT. So HMT had a 95% market share, and all the rest had a 5% market share. And Titan had just launched their watches, and somehow they were not doing well. Okay. And of course, there was a market which was available, but a lot of that was being catered to by smuggled watches. In those days, it was Citizen and Casio which were the most popular. Okay. So typically the Indian male used to look at HMT, and the upper, let's say, very rich class who were exposed to foreign brands used to look at Casio or Seiko or Citizen. These were three common ones in those days, Japanese. And in spite of the fact that the technology for Titan was better, they were using quartz, while HMT was using analog. They were unable to penetrate the market, so they decided to use focus groups. So I was in Bangalore at the time doing my MBA, and we were again paid to be coordinators, and so apart from the participants, even the coordinator, etc., or the moderator has to be paid. So we had done about 20 focus groups in different areas of Bangalore. Some were middle class, some were upper class. Now, we used to give topics like, can watch be a fashion statement? And then we used to make people debate and give their opinions, etc. Okay. In one of them, we had said, why should a person use a watch? Okay. So, one of the interesting findings was, in those days, Titan was trying to focus on a technological aspect, saying that our watch does not lose more than 3 seconds in a year, so plus minus. So what sophistication we have, and technology and accuracy, etc., etc. And it was not working, obviously. You'll be surprised that the findings of the focus group clearly said that the Indian male is not bothered about time. इधर हर घंटे में 2-3 मिनट जाता है, हर साल में 2-3 सेकंड से क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? So that technology was not working. And surprisingly, the heavier the watch, the better the person felt. So जितना बड़ा watch है और जितना heavy है, was the finding. And with these findings, Titan changed their strategy and made the positioning to a fashion statement. And then they started getting slowly into the market. They stopped focusing on accuracy, they stopped focusing on quartz, they stopped focusing on many other things and started focusing on the watch as a fashion accessory. And then they got into many styles. I don't know how many of you were between 93 to 97, practically every 2 months, Titan was launching a new model. All looking nice and with silver color, golden, this, that, and which prompted even HMT to keep on launching brands, sub-brands. So suddenly from a functional utility, it started becoming into a fashion statement. And then once the fashion became more dominant, Titan could outscore HMT. So HMT being a government company had its own limitation of how quickly they could adapt. Okay. Let's look at another focus group, where we had done it for a toothpaste company, which we were not aware which one was. To understand what do customers understand about oral health care. And believe me, the findings were atrocious. The ignorance of people on oral health care are huge. Most people believed it's the toothpaste that really cleans the teeth. What is the reality? The toothpaste has nothing to do with cleaning teeth. It is the toothbrush quality which is more important. Okay. The average, let's say, duration, Indian male used to use a toothpaste for 6 months. What was recommended was 1.5 months. Because people did not believe the toothpaste mattered. And then this company got into education thinking it's a toothbrush which is more important. You need to change it every. Using a damaged toothbrush can actually create harm to your gums. Gums did not figure in oral health care. Only white teeth figured. So focus groups helps you to understand. But then the biggest problem with focus groups is, first, it's a very, very costly process, it's a very slow process, and you really can't generally, let's say, put it for a general population, right? But it does help you to understand a lot of problems, right? Second is in-depth interviews, where either a single person or a panel would interview one customer over an extended period of time, 2 hours, 3 hours, and here the incentive to the customer has to be much more. Okay. And then projective techniques is what? You show them some picture or something and ask them to describe whatever they feel. Yeah. Clear? So these are typical ways of qualitative data collection. Then second, which is becoming very, very common and easy today, is to use observational methods, right? Why is it becoming easy? Technology. And today the quality of cameras that can be hidden or CCTVs is far more sophisticated. You get very good images, etc., etc., right? So technology has made a big change in making this very easy, right? So what are the advantages? This is more objective because you're capturing it, right? So whether the person is willing or not willing, he's still being captured, okay? And then the research is able to focus more on what's happening then, asking questions and ensuring getting the right answers. Okay. And typically some things which are difficult to report can be observed now. Okay. So the two common methods are, you can either be obtrusive or unobtrusive. Suppose there's a corner में लगा के रखा है, it's unobtrusive, but you're actually keeping here, no? I'm being aware that I'm being filmed. Is obtrusive, so it could change my behavior. It could be structured or unstructured. Okay. It could be by a person or by technology like a camera or an infrared reader or whatever. Okay. Okay, then physical interface, the most commonly used is surveys, right? And second, which we want to spend some time because that's interesting, is called as experimentation. So basically, what's a survey? What is a survey? You use a set of questions to be asked to a respondent, right, and note their responses, right. So what is the most important part of a survey? What is the most important part of a survey? What is the most important part of the survey? The questionnaire. Because if that is designed wrongly, answers can be drastically different. That's why we have to ensure that the questionnaire design is proper. Right? So let's get to directly the questionnaire design. Because this is something which some of you would get involved in. Okay. So a question is basically what? A set of questions designed to generate data to accomplish your objective. Most important is you have to try and ensure that the design is simple. Okay. Again, this looks very easy. But designing a questionnaire, often unless you pre-test it, post-test it, you would not know what could be the misinterpretations. It's something which has to be done with extreme care. There are no rules which can say, I would have designed a 100% correct questionnaire, right? So again, in a questionnaire, there are two roles, there's an interviewer and there's a respondent. This is basically a checklist which you'll find in any good textbook for a questionnaire design. Always try to ensure that the answers you get in a questionnaire would be the way you want it. That's why I try and keep it structured. For example, a non-structured question is, how old are you? A better way is to give them options. Less than 20, 21 to 40, whatever is your guideline, right? Should have 3 to 5, max 7 choices. So this is an example of another example. Another example. See, again, it's easy, very to answer. What do you like about ICICI's online banking service? If you don't give options, people would write anything and everything, or some would say everything, But if I give a few choices, they'll be able to respond better. Because I've already kept the last one called as others. Okay. Typically, how you sequence the questionnaire can also affect the answers. That's why you should try and have maximum important questions in the center. Initially, people read too carefully, then they become comfortable, and at the end they start getting bored. Or a simple thumb rule is no questionnaire should take more than 10 to 12 minutes to fill. If it's taking more than 10 to 12 minutes to fill, people are going to start getting bored, right? Even the words and phrases you use should be well designed, otherwise people get drawn to either to the extremes or to middle, not the reality. Okay. So you have to also keep into account that biases cannot be eliminated. So let's look at some important tips. You have to ensure that the question is framed in such a way that the respondent can answer the question. Okay. So take the example here. In your opinion, how many students in your marketing courses are potentially successful marketing managers? Good or bad question? Can't be answered, so avoid asking such questions. Okay. Avoid double barrel questions. What do you mean by double barrel question? Either answer puts you in trouble. It's like, do you still beat your wife, हाँ बोला तो अभी भी मार रहे हो, ना बोला तो पहले मारते थे ना. Okay, that's a double barrel question. Okay. Avoid leading questions where you are actually, don't you feel that pollution is creating a problem and you are buying a car? So already creating a problem, saying leading him to pollution is caused by cars, would you buy a car? It's like asking a question saying in the age of increasing pollution, what are the chances you'll buy a car? Obviously the guy is going to say no here. That's a leading question. Okay. Avoid one-sided questions where you have only positive or negative. You should give both sides equal weightage and the neutral should be in between. Okay. If possible, you can use filter questions. Do you drink coffee? Yes, no. If yes, then these questions follow. Right? Should never use words like frequently, occasionally, rarely, never, etc. because each one understands them differently. Okay, for example, for some people frequently might mean every day. For some people frequently might mean twice a week also is frequent. Right? Avoid complex questions. Maybe a lot of people who are today savvy with certain terms would understand what is liquid assets. Right? But 90% people would not understand what is liquid assets. Right? So avoid words which tend to have a typical meaning for a particular class. Try to make the words such that anybody can understand. Right? Normally use what is called as a funnel technique. What is a funnel technique? Start with broad questions and then narrow down the questions to your subject. Right? Inverted funnel is normally not used. Always also use filter questions. Again, the way you set the questions should be important. For example, if you look at the first version, person doesn't know whether to tick on the left hand side or right hand side. But if you give it in sequence, he knows at least right hand side, left hand side, the answer is still known. Right? Appearance of the questionnaire matters. Quality of paper, spacing, font, etc. Right? Most important, every questionnaire must be pre-tested with at least 30 to 50 people. with whom you have a fairly good connect, because they will tell you what they mean or understand by each question, what is their understanding. Quite often what we believe